I'm Olga de Soto. I'm a choreographer, dancer, and dance researcher. And we are in Rio de Janeiro, where I have been presenting Histoire, based on the young Menendez. Yeah. Well, Histoire is a particular work for me. It represented a moment of change in my relation with the choreography. And the starting point was a commission of a culture geste theater in Lisbon. They commissioned me to create a short piece to pay homage to the young Menendez, choreography by Roland Petit, which was premiere in 1946 at Attribution-NonCommercial-NoDerivs in Paris. And my first reaction was that I was not the good person. I thought they were thinking about Olga Mesa and not Olga de Soto, so I told them, there's a problem here. I'm not Olga Mesa.
It has happened before.
Yeah, it has happened before. Many people do mistakes, so I'm going to give you their phone number and you can call her, etc. And they said to me, no, we're thinking about you. So take 2 weeks and think about it. And first, I was very surprised because my work is very far from Roland Petit aesthetics and Cocteau aesthetics. But I started really asking myself why, what have they seen in my work to ask me that? Well, so first I took a paper and I wrote down all the things that I remember from the young Menendez, and so I did my list. Then I started really watching all the movies that I could find. So I called Vídeo in Paris. I ran to Paris and I think they have 3-4 movies. And well, they confirmed. I mean, this short work that I did confirmed that for me, the young Menendez wasn't such important work in dance history. I think in French dance history it is, but I will put other works before the young Menendez. But then I started really thinking about the way the commission was proposed, and I thought that maybe if I wasn't able to understand why this piece was so important, it was because maybe I was not in that context. And there was something missing that I was not able to understand really what the impact was about because I was not in that historical context.
Yeah. And then, what do you think that this perhaps went in the direction that, because it seems like this has influenced a lot of your work in relationship with perhaps on memory. And also if you can talk a little bit about the format of the piece, that I think is quite interesting because it becomes something that we can say perhaps it's a choreograph of memories or construction on a stage of certain kind of narratives. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, yeah. Well, the first thing is that at the beginning, finally I have this idea of to look for memories from the audience who were there the day of the premiere. So to try to see...
to witnesses.
Yes, to ask them, why is this work so important? Because I don't understand. So maybe I thought maybe they have really good memories that can explain me. But also it was a kind of, how do you say in English, un pretexto?
Like excuse?
Yeah, it was an excuse.
Reason,
yeah, it was, for me finally, it was an excuse in my work. I mean, to work on the young Menendez, it was an excuse to ask myself questions about the utility of living art, its definition, the way it survives or it doesn't survive time through time. And I thought it was a good pretext because the work was, in principle, the main themes were love, life, and death. So I think this is common to everybody. So it has to touch everybody in a way. But also that the work was premiered almost 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So I thought people had enough time to forget.
Yeah.
So let's see what they remember, if they still remember something.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, I have to say, first, I didn't know how to find people. Second, at the beginning, I didn't want to record them. And third, I didn't want to do a movie. I didn't want to work with video because I think it's a very difficult. How do you say that? I think it's very difficult to work with video on the stage.
Yeah.
But then I started finding people, and all my friends around were like crazy, telling me, "No, you have to record. I mean, darling, you can't go there. Just ask questions and write something down." I said, "Yeah, they're right, of course." So.
Well, they became kind of the protagonist in a way of the.
They are.
They are. Yeah.
They are. The video is the actor of the performance. I think. So, well, I solved all these little things like recording, how to put the camera, etc. Which kind of questions, and how. Well, that was the second step, and the third, I start thinking about. How to relate with this material. And it's true that from the first interview I was very surprised because I didn't know what I was expecting. I didn't know what people would be able to tell me. And in the first interview I was just amazed with the answers that I was listening to. And that the second was more or less the same, and the third too. So I really start thinking that something happened that day. Something really happened with that work. So, but also during the interviews, it was very important for me to try to understand the relation with the work in that context.
And on the historical moment.
The historical moment they were living, like 1 year more or less after the end of the Second World War, which it means that all of them went through war in different ways.
And they had a very kind of close relationship with ideas and experience of death and loss.
And lost, So, and people who have been confronted fundamental matters. I was going through the interviews, I didn't know yet how I was going to treat that material. So I decided to transcribe everything, to be able to analyze really the text, to work on the text, the words, and on what was behind the words, which is not so easy to know. I mean, I didn't know that people, and you can never know what people are thinking about when they're telling you something, but you can feel if they are thinking about something else.
Yeah.
So I start analyzing the material, and then the question of how to construct that, how to compose with all those words, start raising. So in a way, I start working on the video edition, and I realized that it was something very choreographical in it, and I decided to really treat it like a choreographical material, even if it wasn't dance, but they were talking about dance. And I was working in parallel on a possible dance that could be produced, and then little by little
it kind of faded away.
It faded away because there was no possible, there was no room for it, and I think it was. For me, for example, in Histoire, there was a real conflict in terms of meaning that could be produced in their interaction, but also in the way that I was constructing the storytelling. And the fact also in taking under consideration the way I wanted to work in the space, to fragment the storytelling in the space. For me, it was also a work on possibility of imagine, but also which is one of the bases of theater, and also about the invisibility in dance. Like, is it possible to create a dance which is invisible? So that is just going to be tell.
So then whatever idea of choreography becomes choreograph of our imagination.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure that it was possible, but then going through the construction and the composition, I think it's a real question. How can you relate to documentation today? How can you travel through it? What do you choose to share? What you don't choose to share? And also for memory, I think working with memory, oblivion is very important. I mean, for me, oblivion is as important as memory.
Yeah.
What people doesn't remember is very, very important. It's as important. Like
And
for
the
example,
changes, and also the changes.
it's moving. It's memory, something that moves and evolves through time and changes through time. It's like, for example, in Histoire, the questions about colors.
Yeah.
Like everybody remembers the right colors, but they don't remember where they were.
Oh wow.
But they were there. Red, white, and black were there at the end. Yellow was the color of the young girl at the beginning.
Yeah.
But they are moving
They're
it.
misplaced. Yeah.
So this I think is really interesting. But for example, which is also very interesting with that work, Histoire, is that almost none of them remember death.
Yeah.
But death is in the title. It's the young man and death.
Yeah.
It is in the title, and there were two deaths.
Yeah.
It was the death of the young man, but also there was death as a character. With the young man and the death at the beginning, I didn't know. Well, there was a first step for Culture Gest. It was supposed to be a short piece. It was a short piece that I showed. But then I decided I wanted to keep working on it because I found like 8 spectators. I didn't have budget to interview all of them, so I took the map of France, I cut it into 2. For the first presentation in Lisbon, so for the short piece, I decided to interview just people that were living in the north of France. And then, well, we did the show, and then I started trying to find money to keep going on, at least to just interview the people that were living in the south. But then some people like Festival des Arts and Centre National de la Danse in Paris heard about the project and they decided to co-produce it. So at the end it was a process which took like 2 years, more or less. And at the time I was in parallel working on another project on physical memory, which I decided to split in 5 years. And well, people were very surprised about it, but I was like, I have a very particular relation with time, I think, and since I started really doing research on memory, physical memory, perceptive memory, embodied memory, etc., I realized that if I wanted to be honest with my process and my research process, I have to respect time, that things need time to evolve, and if you want to really research, you need time to be able to go from one point to another. And if you, like, for example, in this other project, which took 5 years, Incorpore ce qui reste dans mon cœur, it was an evolutive project. We need time to just get out of the work, live other experiences with other people, and come back like 10 months later to see what is still there from what we did, and how can we what can we construct from starting from what was still there at that moment, but that moment was not the same than 2 years after. So I think it's something very important to take under consideration.